Good morning. Y'all pray with me. Heavenly Father, maker of all things wonderful and good, we come asking you to keep us in your hands. Let us do things that please you. Let us say thank you for the gifts, the blessings, for taking care of us and being with us. Thank you for your mercy and your kindness. It's a funny time of the season. Help us get through this. I ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. Y'all, enough. Sharon, get your gun out. Sharon. Short and quick. We have, and for the Rules Committee, there will be a rules meeting to consider a bill that has been put in to the rules as soon as they get off the wall. We don't want to go in there at 11 o'clock. Speaker gets upset with me when I do that. Short and quick. We've seen your bills. Chairman to the front. Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Today I bring you House Bill 934, Modified Structure, page 4, middle of the first section. This bill is for Thomas County, and it's asking for our magistrate court to be nonpartisan, like all of our other courts are in the county. It was passed by the Board of Commissioners and all 3 members of our Thomas County delegation.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lumsden.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I bring to you House Bill 760. That is modified open, page 2. It's the second item from the top. This is a bill that deals with policy renewal and notifications. The bill simply allows for insurance companies to notify the insureds of any change to the policy or policy language by means of a change notice rather than a non-renewal notice and a new offer.
You know, I think it's a part of the training. Let's see back there. If you're a state patrolman, you get wordy. Did you learn anything from Mr. Hitchens?
I try to be briefer.
Yeah. No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I bring before you today HB 886. It's on your back page at the top. Just making some changes to the gate program. Also, on that same page, if you move on down to HR 1090, just transferring some property to from Department of Natural Resources to GDOT for road improvements and bridge improvements.
Let's go back up there to 886.
Yes, sir.
Is Mr. Williams in here? Okay, Mr. Williams, are they going to be able to use their gate card to bury folks? We've had that happen, believe it or not. No questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McCall, I can't wait.
Mr. Chairman, that's planting stuff.
Now, if you're going to start on me early, I'm just going to go ahead and remind them that, you know, he said something about outhouses in South Georgia, so y'all remember that. A 3-story outhouse is the way I understood it.
I could have been talking about them in Calhoun, but I didn't.
Mr. Kirby next.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. On page 4, the first one under structured road, House Bill 81, it's another little tool to help rural hospitals stay alive. House Bill 489 is on page 1, fourth down on the modified open. It's that procurement bill that I talked to y'all about yesterday. And then on page 2 on the modified open, the sixth one down is House Bill 885 that allows agricultural vegetative burns during the summer months in those 54 county burn ban areas. I'd appreciate you thinking about all of them.
Well, I meant quick, but heck fire. Heck fire. I missed the middle too.
You just pass out 489 and 885 and I'll explain them to you later, but I was just trying to do what you said. You said go fast.
I know, and it's my fault that we're going to be in here till 12, but that's all right. Give me those numbers again, really, really.
81.
Slow. I got it.
489. On page.
I got it. I got
one.
it.
All right, and 885 is on page 2.
Okay.
6 one down on the modified open.
All right. You just had 3. I thought you gave me 4 numbers.
Sir,
You just had 3.
that's all
All
right now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 2, under modified structure, right in the middle, House Bill 473 allows some teeth to be put into people trying to pull off their pets as service animals.
What's the rule on that net? I thought that they weren't supposed to try to pull off this sham that they do anyway. Is there not something already out there, federal law, that?
No, sir. There's, we define what a service animal is, and it's covered under the ADA. But there's the people that are using their pets or companion animals just to try to gain access, like it's a service animal. There's nothing covering that. So this would create a misdemeanor statute. So they would have some teeth in the restaurants and apartments and every place else to go after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Kirby, I wanted to ask you about the provision in the bill, and I'm trying to get to the bill, that relates to housing, that trainers and physically or mentally impaired persons shall be entitled to full and equal access to all housing accommodation. Can you talk about that in particular? Is this would this create an additional set of rights for people who have service animals when it comes to landlord-tenant issues in particular?
No, it does not add anything to where a service dog or service animal is allowed. It just reinforces what they are already entitled to do.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Cooper.
Is it not right that that just mirrors the federal law
Yes, ma'am.
of what, Representative Coomer? That's the federal law, the way it's written, and just mirrors that.
No more questions. Thank you. Mr. Tanner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here today to ask for 2 bills. They're both connected, though. The first one is House Resolution 992, House Resolution 992, and that is on the 4th page under Modified Structure Rule. And then that one's a constitutional amendment, Mr. Chairman, relating to the education splosh. This would allow us to give some flexibility in that funding, no more than 35% funding opportunities for local schools to not just have to build buildings, but have some flexibility in being able to use that for some other functions, which is described in House Bill 781. If it's okay, Mr. Chairman, I will discuss 781 since, again, these are paired up together. So House Bill 781 is the second bill, and that, looking for that one, Mr. Chairman. Okay, it's on the third page, House Bill 781 on the third page. And this one is the enabling legislation that goes to House Resolution 992. And this describes what can be used outside of capital projects with this funding. Again, it's limited to only 35%. It will be for maintenance and educational programs. It's listed in the bill. This is something that Chairman Coleman, Chairman Welch, and others have worked on for a number of years, along with Chairman Parrish. This is something that School Board Association supports, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Tanner.
Yes, sir.
Would salaries of school teachers be one of the things you could now use eSPLOS for?
Not any salaries relating to core programs, core classes. If you'll look on line 67, for instance, we made it clear there that it's for computer science programs, but not salaries for teachers. We also made that clear under foreign language that this could not, and STEM programs, it could not be used for core salaries. It could be used for school safety. It could be used for mental health services, wraparound services, intervention programs, and that type of thing, but not core teacher salaries, no, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Tanner, I appreciate your intentions on that, the idea of not letting core salaries be tied up in this. My concern is the constitutional amendment is not that specific. The enabling legislation enumerates the things for which this does cover it. So salaries are not allowable in the statute, but it's not limited by the Constitution. And it would be, isn't it true that, I mean, it's a fair policy question. I appreciate the debate. Is there a way to put in the constitutional amendment something to address the salary question? Because that's really where this General Assembly and others would be bound, not by what's in an enabling statute.
Yeah, that's a fair question. The the constitutional amendment would limit it to the 35%, so future General Assemblies could change what was allowed to be used as policy changes in the future. The thing they could not change would be the 35%, so you're correct.
Thanks.
Go ahead. Ms. Jones? No, I'm sorry. Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said core salaries. So if they hired a guard, something like that, or someone to work with the mentally handicapped children, that would be permissible to pay for that salary?
Well, it allows for mental health services.
Right.
And it allows for school safety enhancement. So I think that would be up to the local school to determine if they felt like that fell into what we're allowing. And ultimately, all of this has to be itemized out for the voters in the community to ultimately approve. So the board cannot do any of this without voter approval.
I understand that, so the answer is yes, though.
I believe they could make a case that they could hire officers to work in the school, yes.
That's fine. Thank you.
No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What is that? Mr. Shaw. Mr. Shaw. Calling Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here to ask for House Bill 951. That's the bill coming out of the Rural Development Council, setting up the Center for Rural Prosperity and Innovation. And I also ask again for House Bill 8.
Where is it? Where is it? Where is it?
I don't even have a sheet.
Okay.
Fourth page under modified structure.
You know,
on the back.
when we started this thing, we put all the chairmen up to the front. And did y'all see where he was? The absolute last one right back there. So that means you got here right on time, correct?
I'm sorry, I was
You
in
get a
another
blue,
committee.
if you come here nearly on time, you get a blue sheet.
Well, y'all do realize that Chairman Knight's committees sometimes run a little long now.
Wait a minute. You know, Mr. Knight made it.
He's a lot faster than me. I got a bad leg. Yeah, I got a bone in my leg.
And you're gonna have another bad one. You keep it up.
And 843 I asked yesterday, and also 754.
Where are they?
Hopefully they're on the front.
And what was that?
754 on the second page at the top.
I got it.
And 843 on the third page near the bottom. Thank you.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Ms. Bennett.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the members of this committee. I come before you today to ask for House Resolution 1016, found on the first page under Open Rule, second from the bottom. This resolution recognizes the collaborations between DCH and DPH and the great work that they're doing for diabetes.
No questions. Thank you. Mr. Perkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under modified open second page, approximately a third of the way down, HB 956 is the first rewrite of the Veterinary Practices Act in several years. It includes language that puts Georgia code in line with the federal statutes, and this is why it's needed.
No questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Bonner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bring to you House Bill 352. It's on page 4, second down under structured rule. 352 would eliminate a $200 annual fee that's currently being charged on a specific category of golf cart.
This got anything to do with your bill?
Come and speak to you, so that's what I did, sir.
Mr. Powell, you got anything you want to say since this is so funny? Some of y'all gonna need some innovation. Mr. Green, you got your button pushed? Mr. Williamson, you got your button pushed? Any of y'all got your buttons pushed? All right. I'm going to push your button. No questions. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I bring you HB 879, bottom of page 3, modified structure. 879 requires an expanded public notice by virtue of an ad to be run in the legal organ when the draining of coal ash ponds, which is currently going on in our state, occurs. And Lake Sinclair is a very good example of why this is very important.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your consideration.
Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 3 I'm going to ask for very quickly. The first one is HB 759, which is an open rule, first page, fourth one down. It is a bill that would allow children who have qualified for the special needs scholarship to maintain their eligibility once they have reached that eligibility. The second bill I'm going to ask for is on page 3. It is the second one from the bottom, HB 866, which would eliminate fees that credit reporting agencies charge to consumers who are wishing to freeze or thaw their credit. And the last bill I will ask for is on the 4th page, right in the middle, HB 969, which raises the evidentiary standard for civil asset forfeiture proceedings from preponderance of the evidence to clear and convincing.
What's that? Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Turner, 969, the last one you mentioned, civil asset forfeiture. That's the one that we had a major bill on a couple of years ago, right?
I'm sorry, we had a couple years ago?
A major rewrite of that whole civil asset forfeiture.
We
a couple
did
of years ago.
restructure some things where we had to require some reporting, but we did not touch evidentiary standards.
And what the civil asset forfeiture is when our law enforcement catches a drug dealer, they take from him the ill-gotten gains, whether it be cars or cash that he's using to do his dealings, right?
The alleged drug dealer, yes, sir.
Thank you.
No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, members of the committee.
Ms. Dickerson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. My bill is House Bill 513. It enhances the safe haven law, and it's all about our babies and protecting our babies.
No.
Page 1, the first bill, 513.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Clark.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have two bills. Both of them are on page 3. HB 702 creates the STEM Defense Support Fund, which would help our military installations recruit the workforce needs they have. And then HB 817 is a bill that clarifies existing exemptions for private investigators to allow them to perform the duties that they are licensed under this state to perform.
No questions. Thank you. Mr. Cobble.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Did you enjoy your time in the well yesterday?
I did. Thank you. I bring House Bill 940 under modified structured rule, last page, 12th down from the top. This agency bill for the DDS allows flexibility in issuing interim driver's licenses as they change vendors.
You ain't been here long enough to figure that kind of crap out. You're learning, apparently. Thank you. No
Thank you.
questions. Mr. Ridley.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I bring to you House Bill 761, the one that I brought yesterday, dealing with motor vehicle dealer titles, electronically filing. This bill has got the full support of the Department of Revenue as well as the full support of the Tax Commissioners Association of Georgia.
No questions. Mr. Williams, boy, we get tired of seeing you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, but I always love to see you every morning, so I look forward to coming to rules, and I thank you for the opportunity, and ask for your consideration on the back page, 10th one down, modified structured rule, HB 928. This is to extend the period during which a student may receive the Hope Scholarship, moving from 7 years to 15 years. I ask for your favorable consideration.
Okay.
On the first page, 4 up, House Bill 689. I wish to withdraw that one and ask that it be sent to committee for further work.
How about a motion, Mr. Smith?
Okay, I move that House Bill 689 be recommitted to insurance.
Anybody got a problem? It's gone. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir. I ask for your favorable consideration.
Where have you been? I've been looking for you for a while. You came for a while, then stopped. We're going to hear about 666. Mr. Wilkerson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad to be back on this 26th day. Under modified open rule, it is the 6th bill. and it would be HB 666. This is the common sense license plate frame bill that would, as long as you can read your tag, if you have a frame on your car, on the license plate, it would still be legal. So law enforcement will be able to do their job. We check with the state troopers as suggested. And so I'm here on this 26th day to ask for HB 666, which is the sixth bill, and I would love to six my way to the floor, so if I could. I ask for your favorable consideration.
No questions,
Thank you.
What's this? Mr. Smith. He's the one that messed you up yesterday.
It was. Thank you, Mr.
I've had to apologize. I think I called Mr. Smith, Mr. Williams 3 times yesterday, and I apologize publicly again.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring before you HB 852. It can be found on the second page, 5th one down on the modified open rule. What that bill will do is that it will allow students that move to another school's attendance zone to finish out that school year at their initial public school.
You got a question? Who?
I had a question for the author. So this would be within the same school district,
Within
right?
the same school district, yes.
Do they not have that ability now to allow that?
They do, but it's at the principal's discretion.
And so this would require that they allow?
Not require, it is a may, and every school district doesn't have it or don't do it.
So they can do it now, and then this, I'm trying to, I mean, I like the idea, I'm just trying to figure out the effect of the bill.
What it will do is that it'll set up a framework that will allow the school districts to see, that also will have the students and the parents to be able to see and to be able to look at, as far as in this law. It's more informational purposes. It is allowed now, but most school districts don't do it. But if we make this into law, other schools might do it. Other school districts might do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
No more questions, thank you. Mr. LaRicchia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have a few, if I may, and I'll start. The first one is on page 2 under modified open. It is House Bill 899, about 8 from the top. And this bill allows greater access to state and local government public works contracts by eliminating what is now an automatic disqualification of an otherwise qualified contractor. And if they haven't performed under a specific delivery method, then what this does is add a line that says they can't be automatically disqualified. The next one is over on page 3. That is about the middle of the page. House Bill 797 is the Georgia Aquarium license plate. It's an already existing tag, not asking for a new tag, but they did want to consider reallocation of those funds because they do so much work with education, research, and conservation. The last one is on page 4. That is House Bill 871. That is tax parity for manufactured housing versus site-built homes. It adds value to the manufactured home and allows them an incentive of a small sales tax decrease.
Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, my question is to the first one you mentioned, House Bill 899.
Yes, sir.
Tell me again what we're trying to accomplish there.
In Title 13 and 36, which is the, there's a state contracts title there and a local government's title, but what that does is it clarifies, or it has language in there that says reasons why you cannot be disqualified from submitting a proposal or a bid on these state and local contracts. There's several delivery methods that we use: construction management at risk, design, bid, build, construction agency. And so this just says that as long as you're licensed, basically what it says, if you're licensed, contracted, and bonded, have experience, that you can't be automatically disqualified because you had not performed under a certain delivery method. It does not mean that you don't have to be licensed, bonded, experienced, and those things. So,
Line 46 on page 2 of your bill, it says these are the things that you can't disqualify somebody from building a building or something. It says a lack of previous experience. So you can't take their experience in building into consideration when you're deciding whether or not they're good enough to do it?
Now, that is existing language, if I'm not.
No,
is that,
it's underlined. You added
but
it
it
in your
says
bill.
experience in a specific, certain delivery method. That's not the end of the sentence.
Okay. I'll try to read it closer. Thank you.
It says lack of experience in under a certain delivery method, but it shouldn't end with that, I don't think.
It does not end. There's more there, but
Yes,
I
sir.
was trying to figure out. Thank you.
I'm sorry I didn't have the bill in front of me.
That's
It was-
okay.
That one is 871, I think, the one that Fleming. 899 was, oh, I'm sorry, yeah. That was the first one on page 2. And I appreciate Chairman Earhart's help with just making sure that that was clean.
Mr. Martin.
Gentlemen, question, I appreciate you doing the committee, isn't it true? And I think what you're trying to do, I'm over here if you're looking.
Okay.
I think what you're trying to do is just, the way the law, the way you wish the law to read if this changes, is the fact that somebody hasn't done it before is not the sole reason for them
That's
to
right.
disqualify. It does not mean, is it true, that when this language goes in, they could still use their lack of experience as the overall consideration, but they wouldn't be able to hang their hat on. Just because you've never done this, you're off the list.
That's right. They were being automatically
They would
disqualified before they ever got to the table.
Right, they would still have to win the business
Absolutely.
through the rest of the thing, but it is not true that if not but for something like this, if you've never done it, you never can, so you never will again.
That's right. That's right. If you never have, you never will.
Mr. Morris. Okay, Mr. Earhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Martin got to the point, but I did want to thank Representative LaRicca. He spent a great deal of time working with all the parties that had an interest in this. I've worked with the state construction manual for 30 years. He has gone through a huge educational curve as well, and has been responsive to every single entity that's involved in this, and has come out with a very good bill.
That's why we love him.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I did want to apologize about one of those votes yesterday. I was hungry and my blood sugar had dropped. I was disoriented, and I'm better today. Yeah.
Goodness, Mr. Setzler.
Representative Ricky,
Yes, sir.
so to be clear, if the state wanted to use someone's experience with a delivery method as 30% of the score or 25% of the score, this does not limit them from doing that in any way.
That's a totally different little process. Once you are taking requests for proposals and qualifications, then you enter into the next phase, which is where you're talking about. And no, you can score them higher because they have more experience in a particular delivery method.
Thank you.
We all good? No more questions, thank you.
Well, I'm sorry I didn't bring my bill and go into detail. I was trying to hurry. Thank you.
Ms. Beskin. Let's go.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I have House Bill 820, which is on the bottom of the back page under structured rule, midway down in that section. This is a bill that provides a new homestead exemption from city and school system taxes for a municipality that has an independent school system. It applies to a municipality located in more than one county that levies a sales tax for a metropolitan area system of public transportation.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Silcock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the last page, House Bill 909, it's about a third of the way down. I bring to you again House Bill 909 that really will just designate hospitals for their levels of maternal and neonatal care. This bill is brought by the Department of Public Health. And then I also have an amendment, I believe it's on your desk, for House Bill 636 concerning the genetic counselors.
Let's get this on your desk. You've got AM 33-1733, offered by Ms. Silcott and Ms. Cooper. Mr. Cooper, Ms. Cooper, you want to tell us what it does? Talk to me.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. There was concern from committee members that the commercial companies that have sprung up, 23andMe and the ones like that where people can send and get genetic testing, might be affected by the bill. So Part 4 takes care of that. And 5 is, that they don't have to use this for nutritional counseling. They don't have to use the geneticist. They can have somebody, a dietitian or somebody that knows nutrition counsel them.
Any questions on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment signify by aye. Any opposed? Okay. No more questions. Thank you. Ms. Rakestraw.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I have two bills. The first one is on page 2, H.R. 913. It is a joint study committee to study the emerging pre-arrest diversion programs that are going on in cities and counties around the nation, to study the feasibility of doing this in Georgia to get better outcomes for people with mental illness and addiction issues. And the second bill is H.R. 447, which declares pornography a public health concern so that we can help combat the demand side of human trafficking.
Any questions? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gravely.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 889 simply requests that...
Ma'am, hold. Mr. Gravely, I'm sorry. Go.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 889 simply requests that heart attack, stroke, and vascular rupture be qualifying events for the state's current indemnification fund, which a public safety personnel would be eligible to receive if the heart attack, stroke, or vascular rupture resulted in a partial or permanent disability or death. In these situations that this would occur are also non-routine stressful activities such as responding to disaster relief, emergency situations. If the public safety personnel were to suffer one of these, they would qualify for indemnification upon medical review.
Mr. Fleming.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Gravely.
Yes, sir.
Those things you described, including heart attacks and whatnot, are also sometimes, not always, but sometimes covered under workers' compensation benefits. How is this going to interact with those benefits?
It wouldn't interact at all.
Be on top of one another?
they would be on top of each other. They'd be separate events. It simply would be in line with what the federal standard is right now. Right now, federal standard allows for heart attack, stroke, and vascular rupture. A lot of times you have to make application through the workers' comp program as well. That application or that workers' compensation case could take anywhere from 6, 8 months to even a year for those benefits to, if they are awarded, to be received by the public safety officer. This right here, from an indemnification standpoint, would be an immediate grant if the medical competency of the, if the medical review of the event was accepted.
Thank you.
No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Holcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 745 is on the first page, second from the bottom. It would provide for victims of domestic violence to be able to break their leases without early termination penalties.
No questions. Thank you. Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to the committee members. I bring House Bill 750 on page 1 under modified open. And this just simply helps to honor all veterans who have served in the military to be able to get a driver's license for free if they hit all the requirements. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
No questions.
And then my second bill I'm asking for is on page 2 under modified structured, House Bill 401. And this is really just a safety bill. It kind of goes along with the big talk going on here at the Capitol about hands-free and keeping the road safe. And this would just allow motorcycle riders to be able to use a headset to use the GPS, not have to use their hands. So it's all about safety. Any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
That's the bill that makes it legal for your sister, right?
Yes, Chairman. And for all Georgians. Saves lives.
Bye.
Thank you.
Mr. Carson.
Mr. Chairman, I think that was my warm-up act right there. Top of page 3, under modified structured rule, this is House Bill 673. This is the distracted driving bill. This has gone through Judy non-civil quite extensively. What this basically says, Mr. Chairman, is that Georgia drivers cannot hold or support with their body their cell phone. They can still dial. They can still touch it to dial. They can still receive calls. They can still end calls. They can still touch their phones for GPS. They can still do voice to text. But it does not allow Georgia drivers to hold the phone or support it with their body, such as between their head and shoulder or something like that. This is a similar law to something that's in 15 other states as well as DC, and they have seen a substantial reduction in fatalities and traffic crashes.
Is it not true that certain municipalities are enacting this on their own?
Yes, sir, and in my home county, too.
Okay. Mr. Hatchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author, does it allow you to hold the phone, though, for looking at your navigation app for directions?
It would not allow for holding the phone. It would allow for navigation and GPS use, absolutely. So you could have the phone mounted in a bracket in your car. You could have it sitting in your console. You could have it sitting on your front seat, but it could not be held by your hand or supported by any part of your body.
Mr. Setzler.
Thank you, Chairman. To my friend, it's well established that texting while driving and dialing creates a safety issue. Would this bill also make it illegal to drive down the interstate, perhaps I-16 towards Savannah? Would it be against the law to hold the phone in your ear while you drive?
That would be against the law. We've talked about that quite extensively.
So there's no ability to divide the question and let texting be illegal but still preserve that?
I think we can divide that, as I discussed in Judy non-civil, Mr. Chairman, we can divide that question between texting and driving when you can look at me from 20 feet away and tell me what I'm doing on my phone right now. And if you can tell me what I'm doing, then we can split that question. Right now, you don't know if I'm on the internet, making a phone call, sending a text message, what have you. When we can identify what I'm doing on my phone, and you're looking at the back of a Android case, then we can split that question. So that's the feedback from law enforcement, that they simply cannot enforce, including local municipalities, sheriff's offices, state patrol. They simply cannot enforce the texting law because they don't know with today's technology whether we're dialing or texting.
And Mr. Chairman, I only asked the question because I don't dispute there's ambiguity about what's happening here. But if I take my phone, I say call John Carson Mobile, and I hold it to my ear, my eyes have never left the road. I think there's a difference in the minds of Georgians between something where my eyes never leave the road and I'm doing this and what's being contemplated in the bill, Mr. Chairman. We just need to be very conscious of that.
Mr. Morris. Wait a second. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For clarification.
Yes, sir.
On the last question from the gentleman. You're talking about the very same interstate that goes off of 75 that we call 16 that gets a little dead. You are talking about the one, Representative Stephen take home.
Representative Sessler's, Chairman Sessler's talking about the interstate, yes.
That's it. Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Martin.
Thank you. To the gentleman, I understand what you're trying to do here, but is it not true that if I were sitting at a red light and had my phone in my pocket and it was making me, it felt hot, and I took it off and just simply did this sitting at a red light and sat it in the seat beside me, police officer saw that, he could write me a ticket and I would be guilty under this law. Isn't that true?
That is true. But the simple solution is to not hold it while you have it in your car.
Again, I'm hot in there. I set it in the pocket. If I do it with my wallet, would that be an offense? Can I finish the question?
If you took your wallet out?
Yes. And did the
that would not be an
same
offense.
motion and put it in there. That would not be an offense.
That would not be an offense.
Is it not true that that's what we're more apt to catch in this situation? Because is it not true that driving down 16, when it is more dangerous for me to have the phone in my hand, it's going to be very hard for a police officer to say that. And my concern is, I believe you, don't like this. I understand that, but I am very concerned that the way the bill is drafted now, that just simply moving that and seeing it in my hand, dropping it in the seat, no call made, no text made, it is an offense. But doing the same thing with my pen would not be an offense, but yet my hand would be moving and off the wheel stopped at a stoplight. That's what concerns me, because these are fairly significant accelerations in points on a driver's license, and I don't believe the gentleman is trying to catch someone doing that, but this bill would allow for that. Is that not true?
That is true, but there's a simple solution. Just don't hold the phone or don't have it on your body while you're in the car.
Mr. Knight.
I guess sort of the same question to the gentleman. I think everyone agrees that texting is very, very serious issue, very dangerous on the roads to our families and to our citizens. My question, though, is some of the details. For instance, I don't have a newer vehicle that has Bluetooth, okay? So if someone calls me or my wife calls me, I can't talk to them on the way home?
Yes, you could. It's a simple solution. If you don't have Bluetooth on your phone, there's a simple app to download it. And if you don't have it on your car, there's a simple, I don't have it with me, but it's a simple device. It's in my office. It's a device about that size, about the size of a phone, actually a little bit smaller and slimmer, and it operates on 2 AA batteries, or you can use it on a USB charge cord. It's $22 off on Amazon. You clip it onto your sun visor, and it's literally an on-off button with a speaker. And it connects to your phone via Bluetooth, and you have a speakerphone right on your visor of your car. They're simple solutions.
Well, we're going to beat it to death in here. Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it not true that most cars' windows are higher than a gentleman's pants pockets where he might be pulling his phone out from, and that it would be very unlikely that a trooper could see that, and that there are always outliers of the possibility of what might happen, and if we worried about every one of those, we would never make a law.
Mr. Chairman, the gentlelady knows that of which she speaks. If I may, particularly on that issue.
No, we may not. Let me.
All right.
I don't want to bust y'all's bubble, but there are semi-tractor-trailer trucks riding on your interstates with members of the law enforcement agency looking down to see what you're doing. So they're out there. No more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Cannon.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I bring before you again on page 3, under Modified Structure Rule at the top, House Bill 755. This bill establishes a pilot program for opioids and HIV. Thank you.
No questions. Thank you. Ms. Thomas.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I bring on page 2, the third down, CJ's Law, House Bill 765, and this bill expands the definition of serious injury by vehicle to include individuals who leave the scene of an accident. As you may know, at least it's been on the news, it seems more than ever. I think the latest news story was one with, I think it was a 6-year-old boy where the person left the scene, and that young man is in the hospital now. But this bill provides that any person who commits bodily harm and leaves the scene of the accident can be sentenced not less than 3 years or more than 10 years.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dugan, are you tired of waiting? I'm good, Mr. Chairman. Senator Dugan.
Thank you for the compliment, Mr. Chairman. On page 4, 2 bills above structured rule, you see Senate Bill 2. As you remember, this came through, y'all passed this out of your committee last year. It just didn't get the votes in time, so we went back to committee again this term. It passed out again. It's back in front of y'all with the many improvements that y'all made to it last year. So I ask your favorable consideration for Senate Bill 2.
Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, on page 5 of your bill, line 152, it reads in part, each state agency which imposes regulatory requirements shall establish an expedited licensing and permitting process. Now, one of our state agencies that is POST, Peace Officers Standards Training Council. So they would have to establish an expedited method for licensing and certifying police officers and law enforcement officials?
Mr. Fleming, your body does a little different than mine, but I also understand there's a recommendation from the Department of Revenue that would like to modify this area as well. I'm open to seeing the changes.
Thank you, sir.
No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee.
Okay, members, this is, if you've got a bill, I don't need anybody to tell me they'd like to put their name beside. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have House Resolution 1103 and House Resolution 1104. This is our annual conveyance and property.
No questions. Mr. Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for House Resolution 1194. It's simply a study committee to look at the emergency room policies and look at this and study it to see if some of the examples that we're hearing of in Georgia and other states are happening here in Georgia. It's retroactive denial or emergency room payments.
Ms. Ballinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for House Bill 798. It's the firefighter tag, just making sure that our volunteer firefighters get the tag. And also House Bill 834. It provides for an extended time period on the temporary protective orders in instances of domestic violence and other circumstances, and it also allows a victim of domestic violence to terminate their lease.
Ms. Dempsey.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, at the bottom of page 2, B 647 to deal with weight loss medication pilot for state health benefit plan for those who are overweight with comorbidities and obese. Also, HB 906 on the back of page 4 to allow privacy and protection from the Open Records Act for our foster and former foster parents.
Mr. A. Powell, and don't let me forget about the AM 39.
Yes, sir. House Bill 898 on page 4. As it brought to it before, this is one that lets the Revenue Department create a fleet tag for those businesses in Georgia that have over 100 vehicles. Makes it easier for them to process and do business. On page 2, House Bill 775 puts the state laws in sync with the federal requirements so that the feds don't control our appraisal businesses in Georgia, and that'll be it'll be back into the hands of the Real Estate and Appraisers Board. And 410, which has been scrutinized pretty heavily, this is the one that we spoke about the HOAs that are overcharging the current $10 fee, and I understand that there's an amendment that'll be offered on that bill to put $100, to raise it to $100 cap.
Talk to me when we walk out. Let's do the amendment for 721. Yes, in case y'all didn't, yesterday we got a little bit, the communication level was not what it should have been between me and the clerk. HB 721 was originally put off to the next day, which is today. And then somehow in the confusion, it got referred back to committee, and what we were going to do is just change one thing. So now, what I want from y'all to read AM 390213. It changes the 10-year requirement to 5 years. If there's questions, it would be directed at Mr. Powell. And what it would be a floor substitute approved by the rules. So you've got that amendment. Is anybody opposed to that amendment? Okay, it's on. Thank you. My bad. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 3, it's HB 831. It's the Employment First Act. Simply creates a council to work with the disability community on exploring options of employment being their first option.
Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bottom of page 2, HB 518, dealing with fees charged to fiber companies.
Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 2, near the top, HB 890 simply makes it a misdemeanor to shoplift and use the fire emergency door. Then on page 1, right under modified open, HB 392, this deals with Georgia Military College and the Move On When Ready Act, and makes it possible for their students to continue taking college courses without having to take a break.
It's in reference to that act, we still have some that work under the quarter system versus the semester system, and this gives them the right to continue on, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Up here on the, y'all got one? All right. This is setting the calendar for Monday. Under open rule, HB 392, hear a motion. All those in favor, 392, what, modified open, what did I say? I never make a mistake.
You said modified open?
I think so. That's why he's the vice chair. Modified open, HB 392, had a move. Any opposed? We'll do them like that. It's on. Second page, modified open, HB 760. Any opposed? It's on. Modified open, HB 890. Any opposed? It's on. Modified structure, HB 121. Any opposed? It's on. Let me do a little something here. I forgot one. On your desk, you also have another amendment. AM 281612. Ms. Jones, would you like to?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This slightly amends Representative Stovall's bill so that it was worked with GMA and ACCG, and they are in favor of the bill now to allow for more transparency for residents.
Okay. You've got the amendment. Do I hear a motion? Any opposed to the amendment? All right, the amendment's on for, and then I'm going to turn around and under modified structure, HB 493. Do I hear a motion? Any opposed? It's on. Under modified structure, third page. HB 703. I don't know how long we're going to have in the well, but maybe the speaker will. Excuse me, I've got it in the wrong section. That bill is going to be under modified open. But still, HB 703, do I hear a motion? Any opposed? It's on. One that's the one we just did for Mr. Powell on his amended thing from 10 to 5, that's HB 721. Any opposed? Under modified structure, HB 761. Any opposed? It's on. Towards the bottom, HB 866. Any opposed? It's on. Back page, modified structure, HB 886. Any opposed? Zone. Modified structure, HB 898. Any opposed? Zone. Modified structure, HB 906. Any opposed? Its own. Modified structure, HB 909. Any opposed? Its own. Modified structure, HR 1090. Any opposed? Zone. Modified structure, HR 1103. Any opposed? Modified structure, HR 1104. It could be the phone. Thank you. Sorry, I thought I cut it off. Okay, y'all can come spank me later. Did I ask for a move on 1104? Any opposed? It's on. Under structured, HB 871. Any opposed? That will get us started on Monday. Remember, we have, hey, whoa. Members of the committee, sit down. All the rest of you can go home, go check in, get on the floor. All right. This is a committee meeting to consider a bill that was placed in rules by the speaker. And at this time, I'm going to let Ms. Jones explain the bill. And
yes, sir. I'd like you, the committee, to consider.
Your microphone's not any good. Would you go to the podium?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like the committee to consider a committee substitute House Bill 973. It's LC 28879-2S. And the bill addresses a gap in current law and the newly adopted Georgia General Assembly sexual harassment policy. It requires that the Ethics Committee provide registered lobbyists with the Georgia General Assembly sexual harassment policy. It additionally requires registered lobbyists to sign a statement that they have read, understand the policy, and agree to abide by it. The legislature, it also sets forth that a copy of these statements will be provided to the Legislative Fiscal Office and available to the public. The availability to the public is spelled out in the Georgia General Assembly sexual harassment policy. And finally, it allows the commission to impose sanctions and a fine for violations.
Any comments? Thought we would have some. Okay, you've heard Ms. Jones' explanation. Since we've got a motion to do pass, do I hear a second? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Okay, it'll go to the clerk's office and then it'll come. And again, that's by substitute. You went with LC 288792S on that, so you'll know which one it is. Have a good day.